I don't think I thought ahead that far. I mean, when I think about me as a kid, my goals were to get to UT and to turn 21 so I could go to bars. And I didn't really think past 21,
Right.
when I could do that. And at one point, I was going to be a journalist when I was in high school, and then my guidance counselor showed me what like newspaper writers make, and I was like, no, that is not going to be a thing. And so I was like, oh, well, computer people make a bunch of money, so I'll go be a computer person. So it wasn't a passion, and that's probably why I didn't succeed at it.
Sure. That's really interesting too. I'm going to pivot a little bit. One thing which is interesting about the insurance field, and I think this applies to anything regarding money, is there's a lot of stress in households about money. How do we create more accessible conversations about money and earning and things like that?
I think it's tough. It's very personal. It's like your health, right? Your health and your money and your religion are probably things that like people don't want to talk about and don't want to be open about. And I think people they think that it's just like with your health. Like we kind of talked about this before we started. Like people know what they need to do when it comes to money and being responsible and having a budget and saving and investing for the future and like saving for their kids. But like it's one thing to know it and it's another thing to do it. So I feel like somehow we need to create space for people to understand the do part of that.
Who should be responsible for creating those spaces? Like, if you think of all the stakeholders in our society, is that a governmental change? Is that something that we as a community have to come together and do? Because for me, it's hard. Like, I want to think actionably. Like, how can I play a bigger role? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, I know you hear, I don't know if this is true, but you always hear like, oh, they should teach personal finance in high school. And as far as I know, they still don't. My high schooler hasn't at least yet. So there feels like there should be a responsibility, like at a base level there. I think your family needs to talk about it more. I've got 2 boys that are very, very different, and they have different accounts. So my older one will spend every single dollar that we give to him, and so he's got like a Green Lights, which is like a pre-funded debit card. So I put so much in, and he can like our younger one never spends a dollar, so he's got like a traditional debit card because I know that he's never going to touch what's in his account. So there's a parent role here. And I think that's important because like we as the community can put whatever structures we want in place, but people listen to their parents, people listen to their teachers, people have influences, and I think we need to equip those influences to help people be better about finance. But like I don't think we can force people to do it.
Yeah. Well, you talk about influential figures in our lives. Who are some people who have been particularly influential in yours?
Other than mom and dad.
Sure, other than mom and dad. Well, I mean, even then, I will say I don't want to exclude them because you've given a great testimony as to their contribution. And one thing you said that I really appreciate and want to shout out is recognizing that their love of you is by far their greatest investment. When I think of my own life, like the greatest thing I got from my mom and dad, didn't matter any of the other things, didn't matter what school they sent me to or how much money they made. They both loved me. And foundationally, I don't think there's a better place you can start from.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing insight. And they have. And it's really cool now because I get to do all this cool stuff, and I've got this soccer podcast, and I emceed this conference like 10 years ago, and I got to introduce the Beach Boys on stage, and like to have my mom and dad along for that and be like so proud. Like my mom still wants to put articles on the wall, everything's published digitally, right? But like she would like print out websites where I was interviewed, or like she'll probably print a photo from this podcast and like put it on the refrigerator,
Hey,
and just that pride and that love is super important. I'd say beyond that, my first boss at Texas Mutual was a guy named Terry Frakes, and he was our government affairs person, and I was 24 and still loving Austin and not loving work and kind of a mess, but like clearly talented. And the fact that he had the patience and like to let me make mistakes and like coach me through those mistakes and build me up. I can see another world where like I was enough trouble where my boss could have been like, you know what, this just isn't working out. Like you need to go your own way. But whatever he saw in me has allowed me to develop in what I am now. So I'm forever grateful for his influence in my life.
How do you create an environment where it's okay for people to make mistakes and grow?
I think we have to create that kind of environment, especially now, right? I've been around in the work world long enough that we have gone from like the boss saying this thing has to happen to people wanting to bring their full selves to work and wanting to be creative. And I think as long as it's well-intentioned, and I always tell people like we can make every mistake in the world once, and some of them maybe twice, as long as we learn from them. But I think you have to create an environment where mistakes are okay as long as you learn from it and you do better the next time.
No, I really like that. I mean, and I want to say that the mentors in my life have usually played a similar role. I think there's a couple levels of mentors. That would be my analysis. There's a level of ones who are willing to open doors for you. That's always appreciated. And there's another level above that, which I would say is arguably slightly more reserved for people who are also willing to tell you when you're doing something stupid. Like, hey man, I love you, kid, but I just want you to know that when you do this, you come off like this. And you're like, oh shit. So for me, that's been really powerful. And I really like the idea of getting in an environment where you can make mistakes, because Ben Franklin said it's best to learn from our others' failures rather than our own. But at the same time, there's a great Kipling quote which is like, as a young man you should learn about women from me, an old man, but you're not going to, so why bother? So it's like there's some mistakes you have to make yourself. Well, and then kind of going back to your finance comment, there are plenty of influential people in our lives. We have our parents, we have, celebrities, things along those lines. And then we have teachers. And teachers come in all kinds of forms. Maybe they're the ones in schools. But I'd also say, you're someone who puts yourself in a mentorship and teaching role a lot of times. And as a result, and then also because you have authority, you know what I mean? You're in an extremely important society benefiting position in our community, and you're on a number of boards. You have that authority, which makes it so that, for better or worse, I think for better personally, but we could be self-effacing if we want to. You have influence. If everything goes right, what kind of an influence do you want to have on people?
I'd like when you talk about the finance part of it, because one of the things, because I do a lot of work in workforce development, and sometimes it's a little bit like separated from like the actual people, right? It's like systems design and influence and all this kind of stuff. And we do a really good job of making like training programs, apprenticeships, internships, whatever it is, available to community college, university,
Sure.
available to people. But then we don't often pair that with like the financial coaching or the, now that you're making more money, like now you can save some. Don't just like, with so many of us, like you increase your level of income and then you increase your level of spending into the same, and then you're like in the same hole. And so I think one thing that we can be better at is providing that wraparound support, including stuff like financial coaching and health support and things like that, to treat like to take care of the whole person.
And that's really powerful too. You talk about taking care of the whole person. One thing I appreciate about you is, your life is kind of touches a lot of points. You're engaging in sports in the way that you do with Austin FC and being an avid fan. I feel like that is a part of engaging as a whole person, physical health, and then also building community as a result of that. I feel like there's a lot of people. I feel like it can be difficult for some people to build community in more than one discipline. And by that, I mean that there's some people who are really great at building a work network, right? And they're like, well, I know exactly how to meet all the people who I'm working with. And then there are other people who are like, I know all the people who I want to go to the bar with, right? But you're someone who's been able to build groups of friends across interest groups and across disciplines. You talk about soccer it's a great example of that. But then also, I've been to plenty of networking events where just about everybody wants to talk to you. How do you, but I think part of the thing that's hard for people in that regard is it's hard to be your same self in all areas of your life. How do you maintain a consistent sense of self?
I guess one thing I would say is like that's a conscious decision. Decided a long time ago that I was really just going to be me, and I don't know if I'm smart enough to be like multiple versions of me. And I don't honestly know at work that it's like there may have been a different path to like advance more quickly if I'd have done all the corporate stuff. And I'm just like, I don't want to succeed in that way, right? I just want to be me. And the other thing I think is really like one of the very few things that we get to choose that what we do in this life is how we spend our time. And I think that's something we should all think about when we choose to where we spend our time. And I think that's something that we should think about when other people give us the privilege of giving their time to us. And so in that way, what I want to do is spend my time with people who share my values and I want to be around.
Well, and I find it really interesting too, and I kind of want to go back on something that you talked about. You talked about, in your younger years, spending some time, and then even when you were in the workforce, spending some time just kind of like figuring it out, I guess would be the best way to put it. But despite that, you're in a pretty high corporate role in this organization. It's like, I feel like a lot of people feel like they've got to get it perfectly all the time or they'll never get up on top of the ladder. It's like, where does that misconception come from? And I guess that's a hard question to ask. So what I really would say is, like, you know, how did you accept your own mistakes? How did you accept that your own path was not up and to the right, but rather that it was winding?
I think it was one that I struggled with a little bit for a while, probably through most of my 20s. And part of coming from a small town and being the oldest grandchild and a male on both sides of my family, and being a relatively smart kid for somebody from a small town, like, I had a lot of people tell me I was special for the first 18 years of my life. And then I got to Austin, where, like, everybody was special at UT. And then on the other side of it, nobody really cared necessarily about, like, me as an individual human. And at some point down the road, I figured out, like, oh, well, I have to buckle down and, like, actually do the work. And, like, the fact that I was Mr. Era High School does not matter to anybody when I'm 27 years old in Austin, Texas. And it's like a lot of self-reflection that kind of led me to that place.
Well, and one other thing you said is that there came a time when you realized that you had to be yourself, that you couldn't be someone else. What was that moment like? Like, what caused you to realize that you had no choice but to be the same person at all?
I think when you pretend to be someone else, or when you really kind of present the perfect version of yourself, it's just a lot of work. And then whenever you make the inevitable mistake that you're going to make, like, you end up beating yourself up, or you can't remember what story you were telling about why you were doing what it is. And so I think, one, nobody's really got it figured out. I think at some point I realized that after finally, if you finally meet, you were talking about mentors and sponsors and things, like, if you find good ones, you learn, like, oh my gosh, like, they are struggling with the same things that I'm struggling with. Today go into rooms and I'm like, I am the dumbest person in this room. And sometimes I'm like, I'm the smartest person in this room. And I don't know. It's just like, we all have these days. So I think that's just finding people who can be real with you, and then also being real with them, and giving people the gift of, like, it's fine to make a mistake. It's fine to be you. And I don't know the exact moment where I became comfortable with that, but that's been a huge change in my life. And now because I have the fortune of being the position I'm in and the influence I have, like, I love having the opportunity to do that with others and for others, and share with them, like, yeah, I was a mess in the 90s in Austin, and maybe you're a mess now, and that's fine. It's all gonna be okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really powerful too. And I just appreciate the vulnerability of it all and the self-acceptance. I think that's an asset that I've worked really hard to have in my life. So to this day, when you make a mistake, what's your response? Like, how do you treat yourself after you do something that you're like, oh, that didn't work out great?
I mean, like anybody, I don't love it. Like, I feel, you have an emotional reaction to everything, and you need to take time to process it. But now I just treat everything's a learning opportunity. And I really try to reflect on how, when I am in this situation again or do this again, like, how do I do it differently or better? And that's worked out for me. Like, some of the best things that I've done in my job marketing on behalf of Texas Mutual, like ideas that somebody brought to me, and I'm like, that's a stupid idea, but let's see if it worked. And then it worked. So there's some amount of, like, not having so much pride, having humility and not having so much pride that your way is the only way, which also means you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn, and just being okay with that kind of learning mindset.
No, 100%. Well, and I really like what you talked about, having humility. I think intellectual humility is a great superpower. And I also think that one of the other things I appreciated is being willing to listen to ideas that even maybe you, off the top of your head, may not feel like, I don't know about this, but it comes from somebody who I respect, so maybe I'll give it a try. And you also mentioned you talked about a little bit developing the workforce. How do we create opportunities for other people to be working on important things? How do you make an environment where great people want to work with you on issues?
I think a lot of it comes down to being friendly, being real, being humble, accepting other ideas. I like what you talked about with, if you really want to go far, you need to involve the people in the project or product or whatever it is. Like, you need to involve the people that are touching it in the decision making about it, because that's like authentic buy-in. And so I think being able to connect with humans and not caring. The best thing about soccer which I think I've probably said before. Like the soccer environment that we're in the Q2 Stadium, my son and I have season tickets, 20,738 people there every week. And some of those people are my best friends. I don't know what they do. I would never have met them except for we love this sport in this city. And I just think that being open to others is really like a superpower that maybe I have, and I think more people should have.
I've always seen the fans in green with like face paint on and all these things in front. I'm like, who is that guy? Now I know who it is.
It's super weird too, right? Because that was the same with me. You see these ads, and it's like, no, that's Jorge and Lucy and blah 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 blah. Like those are people. Those are my friends. All those crazy people on TV.
100%.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit, you do so much great work, and there are so many important issues facing our community right now that you're a part of. What are some of the issues facing our city or our region that are most important to you at this moment?
I think affordability has to be like the number one issue, and but there's so many components to it, and we're doing some work in sort of workforce development and upskilling people right now, and it's just all these systems are so interconnected. It's really hard to draw the line, because Austin's expensive, so people have to move to Bastrop or Pflugerville or wherever, and now, how do we get them into the city? Because we don't have transit option for them. And, we know certain geographies in Austin, they have like worse health outcomes just because of where they are. And there's food deserts. And so I just think like the biggest challenge is like, how do you connect all those systems in a way that's like doable, right? Because eventually you're like, there's like, it's an onion, right? It's like, there's that problem, there's that problem, there's that problem. And they're like, how do we work on those all together? And I think we all have to be authentic, and we have to give up a little bit of our ego. In order to do that, and I feel hopeful that we as a city sort of understand that we need to do that. But I think that's the biggest, like affordability, which really depresses the ability for people to create economic opportunities, the biggest issue that we face.
Yeah. Are there any examples of areas or times or conversations you've had in the city where you realized that affordability was becoming an issue? Does that make any sense?
It does. It's weird because Austin had this reputation for the longest time of being like this laid back college town that was like super cheap. And that's why we all the musicians and the artists. And now like the creative culture is suffering a lot because of affordability. And so everybody moved from California here or New York, where they're from here, to pursue the affordability. And just, I think, the last 15 years or so, it's just really turned upside down.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that would really help in this city that we haven't done is like, development code reform, right? Like if we could build more density in the city because we haven't updated our development code since 1983 or whatever, I think we maybe could bring some of those people back in.
Yeah, well, and also too, there's so many important jobs in the city, right? There's so many things we need to be fulfilled. Essential workers are definitely a huge part of that. And I think it's, you talk about community buy-in. And like if our EMS workers, right, are all being forced to live in, Williamson County or in Hayes County, and they're not living within the city of Austin, they don't have as much of a direct investment in the outcomes of our city, right?
Right.
Invariably, because they're not a part of it. They don't feel it themselves. And so for me, I feel deep concern about that same issue you're talking about, because I'm like, these people are supposed to protect our city, and we're not creating an incentive system where they're feeling the pain and the pressure of the city itself because we're pricing them out of living in Austin. And I think that's something that's really seriously concerning. Are you optimistic for the next 5 years about affordability in Austin? Like, where are you at in terms of what you think the future will look like?
Oh, I know we just got this article yesterday or whatever that Austin's like had the rents have gone down more than any other U.S. city. I mean, I think at some point just like natural market dynamics will find equilibrium.
Right.
Like people, if developers can make a lot of money building apartments, they'll build a lot of apartments. And then finally we'll have enough apartments for people to live in, and so the prices will come down. So I think you just kind of have to rely on that, but it won't be quick. And you can't. There are people who want to get on the way of progress. I feel like there's this old Austin NIMBY adage, right? That in me is like, oh, I got mine, so tough luck for, I happened to buy a house in this neighborhood 100 years ago, which is now worth 30 times what I bought, but I don't want to let the next person have that same opportunity. That's the thing I hate the most about a lot of the old sort of Austin politics that still remain in this city.
I feel like it's interesting because I look at your story and I'm like, here's someone who got opportunities, capitalized and took advantage of it, and then is now working to give opportunities to other people. But then sounds like that, imaginary person we're talking about has the same outcomes for themselves, right? They get opportunity, take advantage of it. But at the other end of it, then they're not interested in sharing those outcomes for other people. What do you think the breakdown is that makes it so that people don't want to give back? And then if I was to ask you to, could you pitch me or someone on why giving back matters?
That is a big and hard question. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, I don't know, because I only have like my own lived perspective, right? And how I see the world, I mean, I think for me, a lot of it just comes down to empathy. I think some people have more, I think, through circumstances or raising, or I don't know what it is that causes that. I feel very fortunate that I feel like I have a lot of understanding, and want for other people, but I've got plenty of people back home that don't feel the same, don't feel the same way. And I just don't know if it's a lack of exposure or if it's, I don't know what it is, but it's tough. But, we all live in a place. Our CEO says this about our company. Like Texas Mutual was founded 34 years ago. We're going to be around for the next 200, hopefully. Those of us that are in leadership right now at this company are like stewards of this company. Like, we don't own the company. We came into a great company. We want to leave it a better one. And I feel that way sort of about Austin too. Like, I don't own Austin. You don't own Austin. But 100%. Like, what we can do is in our time here is we can work it to make it a better place. And we can work to make it a better place for future generations of Austinites.
So talk more about, you have your personal philanthropic endeavors. You talk about board service, and the problem with being a cool guy like you is just about everybody and their uncle wants you on their board. And you have consistently spent a lot of time giving your time to the community. Where does that come back to you? Not necessarily in like a financial way, but where does that come back to you as a person?
I find that super rewarding for me personally. Like, I feel good at the end of every day, both what I do professionally on the working for the insurance company side and like the community service. And I just get energy from being in those rooms. I get energy from other people who are looking to uplift others. Like, it's very satisfying to me. And I try to be more intentional because I think we all go through this phase in life where every time somebody asks you to be on a board, you're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Thank you for considering me. That's just incredible. And now I'm like, I have to be passionate about it. I have to feel like I'm going to be good at it. I don't want to just be on somebody's website as a board member, if I'm not actually going to the meetings and actually contributing. And so I found that space to do a little bit fewer, but do them more meaningfully. And that's just a privilege that I have.
Yeah. For some reason, that's drawing a real parallel to me for economic development. We talk with a lot of my clients are cities, and we do help them with economic development. And, a lot of them talk about intentional development. And then the question I ask them is usually like, what kind of opportunities is your city open to, and what kind of opportunities does your city not want, right? And then I've heard this as well. It's like our door is wide open for things that are within what the city wants and our growth plan, and our door is completely shut for everything else, right? So in that landscape, what doors are open? What doors for you are open, or what opportunities can come in for Jeremiah, and then what are you just like, get the hell out of here?
Oh, you're gonna, like, we're doing like a community dating
100%.
game right
I mean,
now.
What are we into? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, if I mix and match causes, what kind of causes give you that energy?
People causes. Like, I've got 2 dogs. I love them so much, but like, pick your favorite animal nonprofit, because I don't want to like throw anybody on the bus, but like, not so much that. Like, I love parks and I love outdoor space, but like, not so much that, but more anything that we do is like really working with people, and with people who need a hand up in order to make a difference in their lives. Like, that's really where I'm centered. And that's why economic development work can be that, right? Like, I think chambers do a really good job of sort of bringing in jobs and connecting people, local people with jobs. I mean, United Way is like a passion of mine because of that. So I think it's like human-centered.
Yeah, what are some of those organizations that you could point out and say, these guys are really killing it, and I want to shout them out? I wish we had more stuff like that.
I would say in this city, United Way for Greater Austin, which I've been involved with for a long time, think the world of. Austin PBS,
That's a really interesting
Yeah.
one. How does that connect to your people-focused mindset?
Yeah, I grew up like a PBS kid. Like we grew up in a small town, and we had like 3 network channels, and we had PBS, and like I watched Sesame Street and Electric Company, and I watched like the British comedy shows with my mom on Sunday nights, like Fawlty Towers, and I don't remember all of them, but that was like a pivotal part of my upbringing. And again, back to access, like there's a lot of kids that don't have means that PBS is sort of that same outlet for them. And that's what I love about that is they are centered on education. They do a lot of work on the education side. They'll provide curriculum to home-based childcare providers that have like the Bert and Ernie and, that kind of content. So that way, like if you're a neighbor and you've got 5 neighbor kids in your house, because that's all the parents can afford for childcare,
right?
Then you've got like a curriculum from PBS to educate your kids. So again, I think like PBS is like a superpower in the region and needs to be uplifted, especially at a time when federal funding obviously is not great.
Yeah. So United Way, PBS, any other big names for you off the top of your head? I know it's hard because you're like, name your favorite child.
Yeah. Well, as the immediate past chair of the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I feel obligated to no, I don't feel obligated. I feel really good about that work too. And the thing I love about that work and that chamber in particular is like you're really talking to the people who are like on the ground, like small business, mom and pop shops, landscaping businesses, people that own a restaurant, people that have poured their like family's finances and resources into trying to make a go of it and trying to improve themselves. And I feel like other business organizations are maybe more tailored to like companies like us and AT&T and the banks and stuff that are bigger. But I feel like the Hispanic Chamber is really good at like being on the ground with the people who are making the difference.
I don't normally hear chambers cited as a great source of like societal benefit. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. And so, I don't know that people necessarily see them that way, but I will say at least for that chamber, like we're that's what we're focused on.
Well, and I appreciate the thought process of economic development being a source of benefit for people. But I'll also say one thing that was really interesting to me is, I feel like people do not appreciate the amount of good that can and is done through businesses. You know what I mean? Like there's so many incredible nonprofits. There's so many incredible, even governmental institutions who do wonderful things. But businesses which hire thousands of people and provide services that are so valuable that we give away our hard-earned money for. It's funny how I don't feel like business gets the same kind of appreciation. Now, am I right in saying that Texas Mutual insures a lot of businesses and like local?
We do. We insure. Well, and you're hitting on it because I think you've talked to Bobby Jenkins. Like you've hit on the primary issue in his heart, which is making sure that people know that businesses actually do good and that what is it doing good is good for business or whatever he always says.
Do I have to repeat this? I feel bad actually because I have absolutely stolen the ever-living heck out of Bobby's quote. It's doing good is good business, and I've just been like writing that on LinkedIn and like, I wrote it on my forehead before I went to bed last night. That's why I look so good. My God. So yes, that's exactly his quote. So I feel bad because I've started stealing it, but it's so good.
Yeah. But I'd say for us, we sell to businesses so that when their injured workers get hurt. Well, one, we do a lot of work to try to help them not get hurt in the first place. But if they get hurt, we want to get them back to work. And it's about 80,000 businesses, almost all of them small businesses, almost all in Texas. And, we like to think that we're helping create the economic engine of Texas. And we do about $20 million a year in philanthropy all across the state, largely developed on things that help employers get qualified talent and then help support employees in the workforce. They're able to stay in the workforce and thrive. That's kind of that's our lane for philanthropy.
Well, that sounds incredibly society benefiting. How do you talk about the work that Texas Mutual does to make our community better? Because I feel like it is very rare that an insurance company gets a great community reputation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's one for sure. Our old CEO is like, he was part of the building the program. He retired a couple of years ago, and our new ones followed this on too. But he's like, everybody has a bad impression of the insurance industry, and then the insurance industry sells its product by talking bad about their competitors. So like, we're not going to do that. Like, we're taking care of people when something awful has happened to them, and we need to like tell that story. And so it's like being positive is always at least for the last 10 years, has been really part of what we do and why we give. And so that's the story we tell, because the sort of bite-sized version of it is like a strong Texas is a strong Texas Mutual. Because we only write business insurance and we only write in the state of Texas. So, we like investing in community, but ultimately, like, if more businesses stay in business, they're able to continue paying us insurance premium too, right? Like there's a two-sided benefit to this also.
Of course. Well, I think it's also powerful. I mean, it makes total sense. We should align our incentives with those of the stakeholders that we want to support. And if you do that, then it makes it really easy for you to go out and go to bat for those people. Makes it easy for you to go to bat for their interests in all contexts of your lives. And that's one thing. I don't like businesses where you have antagonistic incentives to the people you're serving, because it just gets dangerous really quickly. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, our model is like, if we can get somebody who's hurt back on the job faster, they're healthier, they're happier, their claim's going to cost less, their employer's not going to pay as much for insurance, and we're going to be in good shape too. So if we do that, like, we've met the needs of all the stakeholders.
Well, and on top of that too, you talk about being prophylactic and preventing injuries whenever possible before anything happens, right? And that also is a huge positive outcome for there, because you have this incentive to go out, and paying out claims is obviously expensive. So if you can go out and support people and make it so less people are getting hurt, flat out, pretty obviously, I think anybody could say that, that sounds like a pretty good idea. I want to pivot it a little bit, because I want to be respectful of your time. I feel like you've taken some pretty interesting risks in your life, if there were, and gotten rewarded for it pretty substantially. If you were to identify one time you took a leap to try and change something in your world that really paid off, what would it be?
I think the biggest one, and I talked about Terry, my first boss, and my influence, and the person who really helped me grow. So I was working in the government affairs department as an individual contributor, and the leader of the communications team left, and I came to him and was like, I would really think I'm ready for leadership, like I'd like to be in this job. He's like, you've never done that before. And I was like, okay, well, how about this? I will move from this cube into that office for a month, and I'll do that job, and if you're happy with me, hopefully you'll consider me for the job, and if you're not happy with me, I'm going to go back over to this cube, and I'll be fine. And it was, I don't know how I got the courage to, like, make that deal, and we made that deal, and he was super happy, and obviously it worked out, and he went and gave me back pay for the month when I was doing, like, the supervisor job for the individual contributor salary. But that's the biggest one. And just getting the courage to take that risk. I don't think I've ever had another one like that before, but it was obviously very meaningful for me and helped me get where I am today.
It sounds really like, I don't think you get a lot of stories where then someone also went out and gave you back pay.
Yeah.
How did both of you guys create a relationship with so much trust that you knew that was going to work out in the end?
I think it was just being real. I mean, you talked about mentors, and like the best mentors being the ones that, because a lot of people can mentor you and answer your questions when you have them directly. Not many of them are going to be also like, hey, you're kind of messing up. It's time to change your ways. It's time to change your path. That's probably overstating it, but still, like, but having that relationship, and having that relationship up front, right? Because I think too many people, when that situation, when they're like looking for the next job or whatever, they kind of wait until there's the opening, or wait till they're almost ready or whatever, to start trying to build that relationship. But, real relationships you build over time. And then you hope at some point there's like a beneficial part to you, but, it doesn't always happen.
I'm hearing that being opportunistic doesn't mean just striking when the opportunity is ready. Yeah. It sounds a lot more like being a great opportunist is building everything so that when the moment comes, the jump is like, it's there, as opposed to some massive gap.
Yeah, and I've talked to people in the community about that. There's a friend of mine, she's moved to Atlanta now, and she was the GM of KVU here in town. And we met, and we kind of were like, oh, well, we like share the same values. Like, we're kind of into the same thing. Like, we should do some work together. And like the right opportunity never came out, but we stayed friends for like 5 years. And 5 years later, all of a sudden, this one thing came up, and it's like, oh, this is our deal. And if we had like come together once and been like, oh, well, you can't benefit me and I can't benefit you, so we're just going to go our own way. So, and the thing we did together was amazing. And it was because like we had a real authentic relationship, and just when the opportunity came, it was there and we could trust each other.
That's super fantastic. My last question for you, if there's someone who's standing at the precipice of taking a big risk, with the potential to pay off in the ways that some of the moves in your life have. Obviously, there's that story. I would also say a major risk is coming to Austin, because you were pretty high status back in that place you were before, and then you come to Austin, like nobody gives a crap about any of us because this is a much bigger place. So that's a risk. You know what I mean? In a human sense, it's a risk as to how you perceive yourself. If someone's standing on the precipice of taking that kind of risk, what would you say to them to help them along?
I would say there are other stories, right, where I didn't take that risk, and I just got in my head, or it just.
What are some of those?
Overthought it. I don't really want to share
That's
exactly
fair.
what they are, but they're largely career related. It's always been a good idea to just go ahead and take that step. One, because then, even if you get a no, like, the answer to this thing you've tried. And I feel like just getting in your head and thinking about it. What is the Tom Petty song, "The Waiting is the Hardest Part"? It's like that too. Like you'll create this scenario that's like a nightmare scenario for you, or if you just made the move, asked the question. I remember this is a good one that I did, but the first time I got asked to be on the United Way board, I had wanted to be on it for years. I was talking to this friend of mine. I was like, "Hey, I wanted to be on the United Way board," and she's like, "Do they know you want to be on their board?" And I'm like, "No, I never thought to tell them." She's like, "Yeah, you have to express interest in order to get the thing you want." So I think that was another example of you got to take the step and make the move, and not trust that people will just figure out what you want.
Yeah. Well, and I really respect that, because it does take courage to ask for the things that you want. So you're going to get told no sometimes. I mean, growing up, the easy example of that is I really like this girl. I wish she would hang out with me. It's like, well, she doesn't know that unless you go out and say something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I tie back to that Geronimo Rodriguez conversation I had yesterday, and that was one of the through lines I'll tie from that to this, is having the courage to go out and ask for the things that you want in the world is really important. One other thing I appreciate is your honesty about the fact that it wasn't at every turn that you had that courage to execute. I mean, there's certainly been times in my life where I've been pleasantly impressed with my own ability to pull the trigger at moments. There's some times where I just have not had the gumption. And it's funny because, unilaterally, I kind of walk away feeling like I just wish I would have known what it would have been like if I tried.
Right. Right.
And I think the last line I'll leave you with is Jeff Bezos talks about operating with a regret minimization framework.